Optimizing your graphics for the web couldn't be easier if you use Photoshop's Save for Web dialog box. The first thing you'll do is start off and create all your artwork. You could be as many layers as you need, and you don't even need to flatten the artwork before you optimize. When you're ready to optimize the graphics, you'll go to the File menu and choose Save for Web. It used to be called Save for Web and Devices, and before that it was called Save for Web, so it's nice to see that in CS6 they've reverted back to the simpler name for this dialog box. When the dialog box opens, you'll usually see your optimized image in a large box here. You could also show your original image, or what I like to do is do the 2-up view, or preferably the 4-up view, which shows your original image at its full quality on the left, and then you have 3 opportunities to the right and below to change the different optimization settings so you can compare and then choose the best one to optimize. There's 3 kinds of graphics that you can create that are supported by the web, and those are GIF, sometimes people call it GIF like the peanut butter, JPEG, and PNG. Now, GIFs and PNGs are perfect for images like this one, which have large flat areas of color and type. The beauty of this type of image as a GIF or a PNG is that you can keep the file size fairly small while keeping the colors mostly true. There are some presets in this preset drop-down menu that you can choose from. The number next to the word GIF represents the numbers of colors that will be used in your image. The maximum number of colors in a GIF or a PNG 8 are 256. So usually if I'll start with the preset, then I can toggle up or down the number of colors to determine whether or not the colors stay true, and I can make some other changes to try and get the file size low. The whole balancing act with optimizing web graphics is to get the best compressed version of your original image with the most accurate color at the lowest possible file size. Besides the preset menu, you could also choose GIF, JPEG, or PNG, or even bitmap, which is the WBMP. Probably won't get a request for that unless you're doing some kind of Microsoft PowerPoint or something. Although PNGs these days are usually the default graphic that you would use for a PowerPoint. There's 2 kinds of PNG files. There's the PNG 8 and the PNG 24. You'll probably rarely need to use the PNG 24. The PNG 8 should do everything that you need it to do. So we're going to talk about GIF, then I'll switch over to PNG 8, and then I'll show you PNG 24 after that. So with GIF selected, you can choose the type of color space. There's selective, perceptual, adaptive, and restrictive. There's also custom, black and white, grayscale, and while this is no longer an issue, unless you're on a super duper old computer with an 8-bit monitor, there used to be rendering issues between Mac and Windows. So you'd probably just stay in that top range and choose one of these different options here. I personally think that selective is the best, although occasionally you might want to try perceptual, but I would just leave it. If the colors look accurate, if the rendering looks accurate compared to your original, there's no real need to change it. Dithering is when you have 2 colors that are next to each other and they're checkerboarded to create the illusion of another color. So sometimes having dithering turned off will give you nice, clearer, crisper images, whereas sometimes having it turned on will give you a better blend from one color to the next. Here's where you can adjust the number of colors, and these are just presets, so you can choose any of the presets or type in the color value up to 256 if you like. GIFs, as well as PNGs, support transparency. So if your image happened to have some transparency in it, you can have this box checked and you would see through the transparent areas of your file. Kind of like when you're working on a regular layer in Photoshop and you see through to that black and white checkerboard, which represents the transparent areas, you would also see those transparent areas here in your GIF or your PNG. If your transparency is turned on, which it is on by default whether you have any transparent edges or areas in your image or not, you can choose whether or not the transparency's edges will have a dither. So you can say no transparency dither, or if there is a dither, you can choose diffusion, pattern, or noise. And really which one you choose is totally up to you. It's totally image dependent, so I would recommend that you toggle between the different options and choose the one that's right for your particular image. The matte color is the color that goes behind any transparency, because typically there is some kind of pixels that have semi-transparency or semi-opacity. So the matte color is whatever color would fall behind your image. So let's say you had a circle image that you needed to add to your website. around the outer edges of the circle, you would want to set the matte color to match whatever color the background of the container that you're placing your images in your website. So for instance, if I was going to place it onto a page that was this same color orange, if I knew what the hexadecimal value of it was, I would make sure to select it and make that my matte color so that those semi-transparent edges around my transparency would have the same color matte to match with my background. The default matte color is set to white, but you can certainly change it or use your eyedropper, choose the foreground or the background color. Just make sure that you set it to whatever it is that you need. And a lot of times if you put your cursor over the different things, you'll get a tooltip that will tell you what it is. And as you can see with this tooltip, the interlaced option will allow your image to be downloaded in multiple passes. With DSL cable and T1 and faster, you really don't even need interlaced anymore. But in the early days of the internet, for a large image, you would say interlace so it would show a lower res version first, and then as the image continued to download, the clearer, crisper version of it in almost like a swipe effect would sort of replace the original. So you probably don't ever need to turn that on. Web Snap would be snapping your image to the Web Safe palette, which you probably will never need to use ever again. But the Web Safe palette used to be 216 colors that were perfectly rendered on both Macs and PCs. And of course, it really restricted the creativity of designers for a while. But now that we have monitors supporting millions of colors, it's no longer an issue, so you probably never need to modify the Web Snap. But if you did, you could snap it all the way up to 100%, and it would convert whatever colors you used to the closest Web Safe equivalent. And you could tell it's Web Safe looking in the color table because Web Safe colors will have a little diamond in the center, whereas non-Web Safe don't. So you can see here, black and white, of course, is Web Safe. Convert to sRGB is on by default. No need to uncheck it. There's some preview options. You can choose Monitor, Legacy Mac, Internet Standard, or Document Profile. This you'll never need to change. Monitor color is perfect. Metadata could be added to your document. You can append copyright and contact information, though you should probably really do this to your PSD file before you come into this dialog box. There's a color table representing all of the colors in your image, as well as the current image size at 100%. I would not recommend modifying the image size in this dialog box. You could just go back into your document, make the changes, and then optimize the perfectly sized image, but you could change it here if you needed. If you're working with animation, and we'll talk about animation shortly, you can change the looping options from once to forever or a specified number of times for the animation to play before it stops. When you're ready to save your optimized graphic, you would click the Save button. But we're not ready for that yet because I want to show you the difference between different optimization settings. So for this one, we have GIF with 128, selective palette, no dither. It's 21K. And it would take 5 seconds for this to load on a web page if someone was using a 56.6K modem, fax modem. Now, people in the United States, unless they live in very remote areas, probably are not working on a modem, but at least have cable or DSL, in which case you might want to modify the connection speed to see a more realistic download time. The theory behind this download time, though, is that you always want to cater to the lowest common denominator. However, if you're creating a site for customers that are Fortune 500 and Fortune 1000 companies, probably rest assured that they're always going to be on cable or T1, and you can raise the download time to something higher and get a more accurate idea of how long it would take to download. So you can adjust that at any time through here. Now here's another version, although the colors have been reduced down to 16, so you can see that dropped the file size down to 13.56K. And here we have 32 colors. The file size is not that much larger at 16.16K, but the color is a bit more accurate. It's still shifting from the original, so I would definitely need more colors than this. So I might want to change this one up to 64 to see if that gets me any closer. It doesn't. You could try 128. It still isn't getting me there exactly. So I'd probably go with the first option, which is giving me the best, most accurate colors, and then click the Save button. Before we do that, let's switch over to using Ping 8 so you can see what's going on here. Now with the Ping 8, you have pretty much all of the same options as you do with GIF, except for the file size might be different. So before we had 21K. As a Ping, it's only 10K. So using the Ping setting would give us a better compression, which means that the image would load faster, which means that the whole page would load faster. So for this particular graphic, you're better off using Ping than GIF. Ping is a newer compression format than GIF and often gives you better quality as well as better file size. This is different from Ping 24. With Ping 24, you really don't have as many options in the dialog box, and that's because Ping 24 supports millions of colors instead of just 256 colors. It will drastically increase your file size, though. You can see that the Ping 24 has 25.89K, which is more than twice the size of the Ping 8. But if I really didn't care about file size and I was more concerned about color accuracy and rendering quality, I might choose Ping 24. Another reason you might choose Ping 24 is because it has better quality transparency than a Ping 8 does. And really the best way to tell whether or not you need a Ping 8 or a Ping 24 with your images that include transparency is to actually put them on the web page in the situation that you'll be needing them, and then you can tell whether or not you'd need to upgrade from the Ping 8 to the Ping 24. When you're ready to save your graphic, you'll click the Save button, and a dialog box will come open asking you where you would like to save your optimized graphic. That could be on the desktop, it could be in a particular folder, it could be anywhere on your computer, or even on a network drive or a network computer. You'll give your file a name, and in this case, it's already prompting me to give it the .png file extension. Please make sure that you always include the file extension with your graphics, otherwise they won't be able to be opened. So for instance, if you forgot to put the Ping on it and you're on a Mac, if you gave the file to someone on a PC, they might not be able to open it unless they add the .png file extension after the fact. But they may not know if it's a GIF or a Ping or a JPEG, and you're making them go through some paces which you could just avoid by being considerate and putting the .png here now, or the .jpg or the .gif while you're optimizing. And usually your computer will prompt you to do that. After you choose the name, then you need to choose the format. Now the format could be images only, HTML only, which I don't know why you would want to optimize a graphic without the graphic and just have the HTML. Or you can choose HTML and images. If you choose images only, then just your selected image will be optimized and saved to the selected location. If you choose HTML and images, then you will create a web page. It will write all the HTML for you, plus include your image embedded in the HTML so that you could open that page in a browser window and see that page with your image inside of it. Now, because this is just a single graphic, it would just be the graphic inside of a web page, but the web page doesn't have any contents. It's kind of no real need to do that. But if you had a more complex layout or something, or a bunch of different buttons and graphics, maybe you would want to have it give you the HTML. Now, if you choose HTML and images, you can choose default settings or any of these other options. And if you choose one of these other options, this output settings dialog box will come open and will ask you about how you would like to output the HTML that goes along with your image. So for instance, you could say, I don't want HTML, I want XHTML by clicking that checkbox. Or you could say, when you're formatting these things, use lowercase for the tags and attributes, and you can click on these drop downs to choose any of these different settings. What I would do is scroll through the different options to see what's going on here and make any changes that you think would be necessary. For instance, in slice output options that we're going to talk about in another exercise, you can have the slices output as tables or as CSS, and if you know about HTML at all, this could help you in creating your pages faster if you have it spit out particular code. So I'm just going to leave it here as images only and click the Save button, and my graphic will be saved to the specified location. If I want to preview it, I can drag and drop that image into any open browser window with or without a browser connection or internet connection and view my image. Let's switch over to this next file and talk about working with JPEG files. JPEGs are great not for images with large flat areas of color, but rather for photographic images and images that have large areas of gradient blends, like this combo file that I've created here. You'll do the same thing to optimize your graphic as you would for a GIF or a PNG, File, Save for Web. But in this instance, rather than grabbing a PNG or a GIF, you would choose one of these JPEG presets, high, low, or medium. Or you could override those presets by choosing low, medium, high, very high, or maximum. The setting here determines the quality. The quality goes from 0 to 100, and it really just determines the compression algorithm for the original. Now, I'm going to zoom out here a little bit just so we can see more of the image so that you can see what's happening with the different quality. With a gradient blend and a photographic image, quality set to low, what happens is you get a lot of banding happening. So you see these lines. Now, if that's something that you wanted to create and you didn't know how to do it in Photoshop itself, you could certainly use this as a technique. But you probably didn't intend for it to be that way. You wanted it to be nice and smooth, and so you would increase the quality. Ideally, just like I said before, you want the best quality image with the truest color at the lowest possible file size so that your image will load quickly, which means that your page will load quickly. So you might need to adjust the settings here and there and then compare. So we could do 3up, like this is a quality, let's do like 75. And then this one will do a quality of 40, and this one will do a quality of 10. You can start seeing how the image is beginning to degrade. One thing you really want to look out for is if you look here around the letter shapes, there's these little jaggies, I call them, little jagged edges, which really ruin the integrity, the quality of the image. And if you saw an image like this on the web, you might think, ugh, the person who made this website or optimized these graphics doesn't know what they're doing. So you want to make sure that you avoid that while still keeping your file size low. As you can see here with the 40 quality, we don't have as many jaggies, but there's still some there, whereas with this 75 quality, it's nice and clean and smooth. So probably somewhere between 40 and 75 is a good number. Let's do something like 60 that will reduce your file size to an acceptable size while still retaining your quality. Other options in the dialog box are optimized, which creates smallest files, progressive, which is like interlace downloading in multiple passes, and whether or not to embed an ICC profile, which you probably do not need to do for the web. You might want to do it for some kind of PowerPoint presentation. There's blur. Sometimes you can increase the blur. I'll select this one, increase the blur to remove some of the jaggies, but it does tend to blur the overall image, which sort of defeats the purpose. So you would want to add that sparingly. No need to change this, convert to RGB or monitor or metadata. There's no color table because JPEGs support millions of colors, so there's nothing to see. There's no reason for them to give you a color table. This area is the same. JPEGs do not support transparency, and JPEGs do not support animation, whereas with GIFs you do get animation, PNGs you do not. Just like before, when you have the image optimized to your satisfaction, you will click the Save button. And again, just give your file a name, choose a format, adjust any settings if you'll be outputting with HTML, click the Save button, and your file will be saved to the specified location. And just like with a GIF or a PNG, you can drag and drop that graphic into any open browser window with or without an internet connection to preview it in your monitor. The last thing that I want to show you is when you need to create a graphic at a particular file size. If you work in advertising or marketing, a lot of times you'll have to create graphics for banner ads and things like that, where the file size has to be under a certain amount in order for it to qualify to be used in an advertising situation. There is a feature in the Save for Web dialog box over here in the Options menu that allows you to optimize to a particular file size. So for instance, if we knew that this graphic had to be 28K or less, we can drop in the appropriate size and click OK, and Photoshop will automatically adjust the quality to get us that desired file size, and then we can click Save and optimize that graphic. You know, the quality may not be perfect, there still may be jaggies, which means we may want to rethink the graphic design so that we can get away with a better quality image at a lower possible file size. But that's one way of tricking the system so that you can have that specified size when you're working. Again, click the Save button when you're done or cancel to go back to your file. Now let's talk for a second about slicing and optimizing graphics. In the early days of the internet, what we would do is we'd have our mock-up of the entire web page, and then we would optimize individual pieces of it as slices. And then those slices would be reassembled in a web page inside individual table cells, almost like taking a puzzle apart and then putting the puzzle back together. Smaller individual pieces would load one at a time individually rather than one giant graphic. So you could have the whole thing as a design in individual graphics. There was no HTML text. There was no CSS style sheets or anything like that. It would just be pictures in a web page. So now these days, you want to do as much as you can with HTML and cascading style sheets. So you wouldn't want to necessarily have a bunch of graphics on your page. You want to use graphics sparingly and do as much as you can with CSS and HTML. However, there may be times where you do need to slice some graphics and optimize them and save them for the web. So I've created this little button diagram here, and the idea is this would be the normal look of it, and then once you have your CSS applied to your page, you could toggle on a different graphic for the hover state. So normal and over. And I've done this effect for each of these, normal and over, normal and over. So to make this work, I need to create slices for each of the numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4, optimize those graphics as they are, then turn on the effects for all 4 sections and optimize again for the over state, and then reassemble everything in HTML with my CSS. To create slices, you'll want to use your slice tools, which are located in your toolbar underneath the crop tool. There's 2 slice tools, the slice regular tool and the slice select tool, so that you can select and modify the individual slices. When you select your slice tool, which effectively turns the slices on in your view, you'll see that it's one giant slice. I think one of the easiest ways to create slices, rather than clicking and dragging around a shape and releasing, is to use this button here called Slices from Guides. So what you would need to do is create some guides, and I had already created them and hidden them, so that you can easily press this button and have Photoshop automatically create slices from your guides. Next, you would want to go into the Save for Web dialog box, choose your optimization settings, and you want to make sure that you select these. So I'm clicking and shift clicking to make sure that these settings will be applied to all 4 of my slices. And because this is large flat areas of color with text, I'd probably choose the Ping 8 option to get the best quality at the lowest size. I'm not going to change anything here, but what I would do is I would save these graphics into my desired location with my desired file name and my file extension to my desired location. Then I would come back and turn on the effects for all of these and optimize this next set. File, Save for Web. I'm going to select by shift clicking all 4 of my slices. I don't need to change any of the settings because it remembered what I had saved before. Clicking the Save button. In this case, I want to save these as 1234_over.png to help me see the difference between my original. I'm saving all 4 slices. Then I'm done with my file, and I can reassemble all of the pieces in Dreamweaver with my HTML and my CSS.